Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to read this chapter, and this is the PDF of the book Vindication of the Right of Women, written by Mary Wollstonecraft. Only this video I'm going to read the pages of chapter 5, and this video can be divided into part wise. Today I will cover 10 pages of this chapter. So let's begin this video. Writer who have rendered women object of pity and bordering on contempt. We now have to examine the opinion on the female character and education that have argued for some modern publication and have been given the tone of most briefer and more casual things said about the sex. The first is ratio. I shall begin with the ratio, giving sketch of the character of a woman. In his word, interrupting comments and reflection. My comment will all spring from few simple principle and could be derived from what I have already said, but his argument has been constructed with so much ingenuity that I think I have to attack it more detailed manner and make the application of my principle myself rather than leaving it to the reader. Sophie says Rossio said should as perfect a woman as Emily is a man, and to make her so he has to examine the character that nature given to the female sex. He then proceeds to argue that woman ought to be weak and passive because she has less bodily strength than man, from which he infers that he was formed to please him and be subject to him, and that making herself agreeable to her master is the grand purpose of her existence. Still, to give a little more dignity to lust, he insists that when a man goes to a woman for a pleasure, he should not use his strength, should depend on her will. Here, Rossio. So we deduce a third conclusion from the different constitution of the sexes, namely the stronger should be a master in appearance but should depend on weaker. And in fact, this is because of an invariable law of nature which gone like this. Nature gives human greater ability to arouse desire in man, and it has given man to satisfy them. So nature makes the man dependent on good pleasure of woman and forces him to try to please her in his turn in order to obtain her consent that he should be stronger. On this occasion, the most delightful circumstance that a man find in his victory is to be unsure whether she has yielded to his superior strength or whether her inclinations spoke in his favor. The female are usually artful enough to leave this doubt, and women's understanding in this matter corresponds exactly to their constitution. Far from being ashamed of their weakness, and they glory in it. Their tender muscles make no resistance. They pretend to be unable to lift the smallest burden and would blush to be thought robust and strong. What is the purpose of all this? Not merely for the sake of appearing delicate, but also to prepare way for fable whenever that suits their purposes. Wollstonecraft, if Rossio is right about woman's duty, if pleasing man is the iron bed of the fate, that character should be made to fit, stretching or contracting it regardless of moral and physical distinction, that then it indeed follow that woman ought to be sacrificed every other consideration to make herself agreeable to men. But I think it can be shown that practical rule built upon this ignorable base would undermine the purpose of this life as distinct from afterlife, and that give me to doubt whether woman was created for men. This means, of course, that I don't accept every sentence of the Bible as literally true, but if the cry of irreligion and or even atheism is raised against me, I will simply declare that if an angel from heaven told me that Moses' beautiful poetically account of beginning of the world cosmogony and of the fall of a man is literally true, I still couldn't believe. What my reason told me was derogatory to the character of the Supreme Being, and having no fear of the devil before my eyes, and I venture to call this suggestion of a reason insist of resting my weakness on broad shoulders of the first seducer of my frail sex, Rossio. Once it has been demonstrated that man and woman aren't on not be constituted like temperament and character. It follows, of course, that they should not educated in same manner in pursuing the direction of nature. They ought indeed to act in concert, their sexual intercourse or a collaborative joint enterprise, but they shouldn't be engaged in same employment, and the final goal of this activity should be same, but means they take to accomplish them, and thus their tastes inclination should be different. So for this reason, the education of women always be relative to men, to please us, be useful to us, make us love and esteem them, and educate us when we are young, take care of us when we are grown up, advise us, console us, make our lives easy and agreeable. These are the duties of women at all the times, and what they should be taught in their infancy. Whenever we lose touch with this principle, we run wide of the mark. All the precepts that are given to contribute neither to their happiness nor to our hours. Girls are from their earliest infancy fond of dress, not content with being pretty. They want to be thought to be pretty. They are to be governed by talking to them of what pretty will think of their behavior. This thought, this control device work with them almost as early as they are capable of understanding anything that is said to them, but it doesn't have the same effect with boys. They don't care much what people think of them, as long as they can pursue their amusement with interference. The time and care necessary to get boys to be motivated by thought of what people will think. The first lesson wherever the girl get it from is very one, as the body is in a way born before the soul. Our first concern should be care for the body. This order, body first then soul, is the same for both sexes, but the object of that care is different in male sex. It is the development of bodily power in the female sex, the development of personal charm. I'm not saying that either strength or beauty should be confined exclusively to one sex, but only that the priorities for them should be reversed in two sexes. The woman certainly need enough strength to able to move and act gracefully, and man need enough address to be able to act with ease. uh, Here then we see a propensity perfectly established. All you as a parent need to do is to go with it and regulate it, and the little girl will doubtless want to know how to dress up her doll, to make its sleeve note and its flounces and its dress and etc. She need a lot of help from member of the household, so much help that it would be much more agreeable to her to do all this for herself. That provide a good reason for the first lesson that are usually taught to this young female, which we seem not to that provide good reason for the first lesson that are usually taught to these young females, and which we seem not to be setting them a task doing them a favor of instructing them in something immediately useful to themselves. They nearly all learn with reluctance to read and write, but the very readily apply themselves the use of their needles, and they imagine themselves already grown up and think with pleasure that such qualification will enable them to democrate themselves. Wollstonecraft, the being who patiently endure injustice and silently put up with insult, and will soon unjust that enable wrong. This is not the true way to form or improve the temperament, for in general men have better temperament than women, because they are occupied in pursuit that interest the head as well as the heart. With head steadiness gives healthy temperature to the heart. People of sensibility seldom have good temperament, and the formation of the temperament is school work of a reason which bring helpful skill to bear on bringing together jarring element. I never knew a weak or ignorant person who have good temperament, though the constitutional good humor and the docility that fear causes in the behavior, if often good temperament. Note causes in behavior, because genuine meekness reaches the heart or mind only as an effect of reflection. The simple restraint arising from fear produces number of unpleasant mood in domestic life, as many sensible men will agree after finding some of the gentle irritable creature to be very troublesome companions. Rossio goes on to argue a sex should preserve its own special tone and manner. A meek husband may make wife behave badly, but mildness of disposition on her part will always bring him back to reason, at least if he isn't absolutely approved, and will sooner or later trump over her. Wollstone, perhaps the mildness of reason might sometimes have this effect, but abject fear always inspires contempt, and tears eloquent when they flow down fair cheeks, a heart that can melt when insulted, and instead of revolting at injustice can kiss the road, and what material it be made of. If a woman can curse a man with a true feminine softness at very moment when he treat her tyrannically, isn't it fair to infer that virtue is built on narrow views and selfishness? Nature can be never dictated any such insincerity. You may call prudence of this sort virtue, but the morality becomes vague when any part of it is supposed to rest on falsehood. These are mere expedient, and expedient are only useful for a moment, whereas the good in virtue is everlasting. Let the husband be aware of it, trusting too completely in his servile obedience, for if his wife can sweetly curse him when she is and ought to be angry, and she may do the same after the parting with a lover, these are all preparation for adultery. If a fear of the world or of hell restrains her desire to please other men, when she can no longer please her husband, and what alternative is there for this being who was found by nature and art only to please men? What can compensate her for this privation? Where is she to look for fresh employment? Where can she find sufficient strength of mind to decide? Begin the search when her habits are fixed and her chaotic mind has long ruled by vanity. But this biased moralist Rossio make plausible case based on his own system in favor of cunning. Rossio, daughters should always submissive, but their mother should not be inflexible. To make a young person tractable, she shouldn't be made unhappy. To make her modest, and shouldn't be made stupid. On the contrary, I wouldn't be displeased at her permitted to use some skill not to escape punishment if she has disobeyed, but esteemed herself from necessity of obeying. Subtlety is a talent that is natural to female sex, and in line with my views that our natural inclination are right and good in themselves, I hold the subtlety should be cultivated as well as other. All need is to prevent it from abuse. Wollstonecraft, a little later, he triumphantly proclaims whatever is right, granted for, but perhaps no aphorism even contained a more paradoxical assertion than this, as it is a solemn truth with respect to God, and he sees the whole at once. But man who can inspect only disconnected part find many things and wrong, and it is right that he should try to alter what appear to him to be wrong, even while bowing to his creator wisdom and respecting the darkness he is working to disperse. Given the principle that whatever is right, Rossio correct in what he infers from it, Rossio the female sex superiority in addressing is very fair payback for their inferiority in strength. Without this superiority, woman should be man's slave, not his companion. Her superior skill and ingenuity let her preserve her equality and govern man while she pretend to obey. Woman has everything against her, our fault as well, our own timidity and weakness. She has nothing in favor except her subtlety and her beauty. Isn't it very reasonable that she should cultivate both? Wollstonecraft, greatness of a mind can never cohabit with cunning or address. Those words really refer to insincerity and falsehood. But I shan't go on about and merely point out that if any class of mankind is created, so that it has to be educated by rules that aren't strictly deductible from truth, and then virtue is an affair of convention. Man have superior strength of the body, but if it weren't for mistaken notion of beauty, and woman would become strong enough to be able to earn enough to live on, and which is the true definition of independent, and to bear bodily inconveniences and exertion that are needed to strengthen the mind. Also, beauty can't be acquired by dress, and flirting is an art not early and speedily attained. But even when girls are young, they can work to have agreeable gestures, pleasing tone of voice, and easy way of walking and moving, and their skill in gracefully suiting their looks and attitude to time and place and occasion. I would like a young English woman to cultivate her agreeable talent in order to please her future husband with as much care and persistence as a young Circassian woman cultivates hers, so that she will be ready to be in harem of Eastern potentate. The tongues of women are very voluble. They speak earlier, more readily, and more agreeably than men. They are accused also of speaking much more, but they should, and I am willing to convert this reapproach into complement. Their lips and eyes have the same activity as men's, and for some reason a man speaks of what he knows, a woman of what pleases her. The man's speech requires knowledge, the woman requires taste, and man discourse should aim mainly at being useful, a woman at being agreeable. The different conversations should have nothing in common but truth. So we should restrain the prattle of boys with severe caution. What is the purpose of what you are saying? But for girls, practically, we need a different, though equally difficult question. How will what you are saying to be received in fancy when they can't yet tell good from evil? Girls ought to be observed it as a law never to say anything that listener will find disagreeable, not an easy law to obey, and made all the harder of by having always to be subordinate to the former law against ever telling an untruth. Wollstonecraft introduced Rousseau, the tongue of woman passage with the word to make woman completely insignificant. He adds, to govern the tongue in this manner must require great address indeed, and it is too much practiced both by men and women. How few people speak out of the abundance of the heart. So few that I, who love simplicity, would gladly give up politeness for quarter of the virtue that has been sacrificed to it. Politeness is a equivocal quality which most should only be polish of virtue. But to complete the sketch, Rousseau, it is easy to see that male children can't form any true notion of religion. Those ideas must be thoroughly out of reach of female children. For that very reason, I would begin talking to them about religion earlier. If we waited until they were able to discuss such profound question in disciplined way, we would risk never speaking to them on this subject. Reason in women is practical reason. It enables them to use skill in finding the means of achieving a known end, but could never enable them to discover that in itself. The social relation between the sexes are truly admirable. What result from their union is moral person, of which woman could be called the eyes, and the man the hands. From the man the woman learns what she is to see, and from the woman the man learns what ought to do. If a woman could get back to the first principle of things as well as man, and if man could go into details as well as woman, neither would depend on the other for anything. They would live in perpetual discord, and their union could not survive but in the harmony that in fact naturally exists between them, and their different abilities tend to one common end, and it's hard to say which of them contribute more, and each follows impulse of the other. Each is obedient and both are mastered. Just because a woman conduct is subservient to public opinion, and her faith in matter of religion should be subject to authority. Every daughter ought to be same religion as her mother, and every wife to be a same religion as her husband, even if the religion she acquires is false. God does not see her acceptance of wrong behavior because of faculty that induces that woman and daughter is to submit to order of nature, as they can't judge for themselves. They ought to abide by decision of their father and husband as confidently as by the truth of church. Their great need to explain to women reason for their religion belief, but there is need to state precisely the tenet they are believe. A creed that present only obscure ideas to the mind will lead to fantasism, and creed that present absurdities will lead to loss of faith. Mary Wollstone comment briefly on this in a manner you could now predict from what she has said up to here and what follows at a length that would occupy about 4 pages of present version is a series of shorter quotation from Rousseau interrupted by Mary Wollstone comment. Their overall theme is conflict between Rousseau wish to make women physical, attractive and obedient, and MW's wish that women should above all thought and self-control. She fiercely attacked his emphasis on the need for a woman to be physically attractive so that she can be her mistress, especially in the light of his thesis that relation wouldn't last for long in the marriage. She speaks of this whole emphasis in Rousseau as reveries of fancy, refined licentiousness, meaning roughly that he is supplying himself soft pornography, and she continues the man who can be contented to live with pretty and useful companion who has no mind has lost in voluptuous gratification, a taste for more refined pleasure, and being loved by someone who could understand him in society of his wife. He is still alone except when the man is sunk in brute lower animals. He means except when man uses her sexual satisfaction and the charm of life, says grave philosophical reasoner Adam Smith. Is a sympathy. Nothing pleases us more than to absorb in other men a feeling with emotion of our own breast, but according to the line of thought by which women kept from true tree of knowledge, the important years of youth and usefulness of age and rational hopes of future life are all to be sacrificed to making woman an object of desire for a short time. Beside, how could Rosa accept them? So, to be virtuous and constant when they aren't allowed to base their virtue on reason or direct their inquiries toward truth. Rosy errors in reasoning all arise from sensibility, and women are very ready to forgive sensibility to their charms, and he should have reason. He became impassioned, and his thought inflamed his imagination instead of enlightening his understanding. Even his virtues led him astray. Born with warm constitution and lively imagination, he was naturally drawn toward the other sex with such eager fondness, and that he soon become lascivious. If he had given way to this desire, and the fire would have extinguished itself in natural manner, but virtue and romantic kind of delicacy made him practice self-denial. But when he has restrained in his behavior by fear, delicacy or virtue, he let his imagination run riot, and glowing images it came up with sank deep into his soul, and also so warmly he painted what forcibly felt that reader hearts have been drawn and their imagination inflamed. The stronger the reader's imagination are, the more sure they are that they have been convinced of something intellectually, when they have only shared the feeling of poetic writer who skillfully exhibit the object of sense voluntarily shadowed or gracefully veiled, and by thus making us feel when we think we are reasoning. He leaves a deposit of error in the mind. Why was Rosio's life divided into between ecstasy and misery? It has to be because the versions of imagination produced both. If he had allowed his imagination cool, he might have acquired more strength of mind, but peace to his spirit. I am at war with his asses, but with his opinions I am fighting only sensibility that lead him to degrade woman by making her slave of love. Let us, my dear contemporaries, rise above such narrow prejudices. If the wisdom is desirable on its own account, if the virtue properly so called must be based on knowledge, then let us try to strengthen our mind by reflection until our heads become in balance for our hearts. Let us not confine all our thought to everyday trivial occurrence or even knowledge to an acquaintance with our lover or husband heart. Rather, let the carry out of every duty be subordinate to the grand duty of improving our mind and preparing our affection for a more exalted state. If we really were created only to flatter our out and then die, then let us give full play to sensibility and laugh at severity of reason. But even then this wouldn't be satisfactory, because we wouldn't have strong bodies or mind, and the life would lost in feverious pleasure or wearisome idleness. But the system of education that earnestly want to sex exploded seem to presuppose something that ought never to be taken for granted. What Mary Wollstone says in the rest of this paragraph. The presupposition has two parts: a woman who is well brought up by the strength of system I am attacking will protected many mishaps fortune, and the blindfolded goddess will take off her blindfold and smile on this woman, bringing her admirable male partner, a woman who devoted to virtue and thus isn't well brought up by those standards and will get benefit only to her own frame of mind. She is likely to have cope with serious worldly difficulties and to put up with the vices and mood of people she can never regard as friends. How Mary Wollstone said this, namely that virtue shields us from casualty of life, and that fortune, slipping off her bandage and with smile on well-educated female, and bring in her hand an ameliorated telematches, whilst on contrary the reward which virtue promises to her voluntaries is confined, it seems clear, to their own bosoms, and often must they contend with the most vexatious worldly cares, and bear with the vices and humours of relation for whom they never feel a friendship. Many women, instead of being supported by the reason and virtue of their fathers and brothers, have strengthened their own mind by struggling with their vices and follies, but they have never met with an hero in the shape of husband. If they didn't have a husband, he might manage to bring their reason back to its natural dependent state and restore to man the privilege of rising above opinion and the privilege that usurped by women. The second woman isn't rewarded much by virtue, although she is rewarded to the upsort of for the first woman is better, if we understand it's being brought by fortune luck. But it is clear why is verbatim passage is also called the worked by virtue. In the second paragraph, Mary Wollstone says that husband might pay the debt that mankind owed and woman etc. But Rosie and the don't think that man owes the second woman anything. Perhaps Mary Wollstone mean the paying the debt the woman thinks mankind owes her. So this is the two Fordyce, Fordyce, James Fordyce, a Scottish Presbyterian minister and a poet, had written two enormously popular books about upbringing of young women. Mary Wollstone makes no secret of contempt for this work, both for their overlap with Rousseau's views, for their style. He isn't worth discussing, she says, but he has to attended to because is in so influential. This section would run to about 5 pages, but it wouldn't be presented here. A sense of what isn't worth quoting, and of what Mary Wollstone thought of him can be gathered from few of her expression regarding him. A most sentimental rant, and have heard rational men use the word indecent when they mention Fordyce's writing, a display of cold artificial feeling and the mark of little vain mind, a lover like phrase of pumped up passion. The lover has poetic license, but why should grave preacher interloud his discourses with such fooleries?